Hi, Jane here. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about phase 2 of the writing process. In the last video we talked about the planning phase, and this time we're going to talk about organizing. And I've actually, when I started putting the material together, decided to make this phase 2 into 2 separate videos because there's just so much information and it really does go in 2 different directions. So in this video, we're going to talk about organizing, but in terms of your files, your research work, your notes and things, the physical things that you have around you that pertain to your writing project, and also those digital files, those computer files, things on the internet, that kind of thing. So this again, let me just reiterate, this is practical, common sense information, but especially as a new writer, you know, after you write a while, you have probably developed your own style of doing things, and that's fine, that's good, but there's always room for improvement, and what I'm teaching here, what I'm sharing, really will make your writing project move ahead much more smoothly and efficiently, and it will allow you to put more focus and energy on the actual writing because you won't be worrying about everything that you're looking for. I've worked with clients. I have a friend who writes. I have several friends that write, but I'm thinking of one in particular. And she'll sit down to get going and writing something, and then sometimes she'll just get frustrated because she can't lay her hand on, what was that? I know I wrote it, I know I put it somewhere, and she can't find it again. So where she might be sitting out on the lanai writing, working away on her tablet or computer or whatever, instead she's having to hunt through her office, her here and there, everywhere, looking for that piece of information. And then I'll get a text later, sometimes up in the evening, and she'll go, found it. You know, so I'm trying to help you avoid that issue and just make things go smoother for you. And truly part of the writing process is organizing your material so that in organizing it, you're preparing it for the writing itself. And so what might feel kind of, I don't know why I have to do this doesn't relate to my writing. Well, no, these are not what we're talking about last week and this week and next aren't specifically about how to write, but they are very much about facilitating your writing so that when you do begin to write, you're very together with it. It's very smooth. You have a nice flow to it because you've set the stage for it. You've made the preparation for it to make it easy for yourself. So that's what these front parts of the writing process are truly all about. Now, we're talking about 2 different kinds of content material, if you will, research content material. We're talking about things that are what I refer to as hard copy. That you hold them in your hands. They're not digital. They're not out in cyberspace somewhere. What exactly are they? Well, they're all kinds of things. Now, I've had authors tell me, I've had writers that I've worked with tell me that, well, you know, I've got all of my stuff in my head, so I'm good. I don't really need to do all that. I know where I'm going. And in some cases, to a degree, I do relate to that, and I can agree to that, depending on the size and scope of your project and your writing ability, your organizational skills. You know, if for smaller things, there might be less preparation, but there's still some organizing to be done. It just may not be as broad as if you were doing a large project. But if you're writing a book or something with some size and scope to it, you might have some of it in your head, but the more of it you keep in your head, in my humble opinion, the more bogged down you get trying to get it all out and get it into some semblance of order. And my experience has shown me that with clients I work with, when we can get them to do these steps ahead, then when you get into the writing, number one, it flows more smoothly for them and it's easier for them to do. And number two, when the first draft gets finished and you get to that point of revision work and editing, those two go together, and we'll talk about that later in the process. That stage it tends to go easier and quicker with less struggle involved. The more planning was done up front, the more organizing was done up front. And so I'm just a big proponent of this, and I encourage you, especially if you're new to writing or you want to improve your writing skills. I'm not just speaking to new people, but certainly anyone who wants to improve. Some of the things that you do kind of behind the scenes like this really help facilitate that actual writing flow when you sit down and at your keyboard or wherever, however you want to do it, and you begin to just write your piece. These steps are just very valuable. So what do we mean by hard copy files? What's involved in those? Well, life is life, For most of us, I think life happens all the time. And so from my own experience, I have journals, I have notebooks, I have just pieces of paper where I've taken notes when I've been somewhere. I personally keep a little notebook in my car, and it's got its own little stash under the armrest there in my car in the middle of the seat. And if something hits me, I can pull over. This is just me, you may be way different. I'm not real good at just pulling out my phone and dictating a note to myself. I have ongoing battles with Siri on my phone, and I prefer to just pull off or hold the thought, and when I do get off the road, then I take my notebook out and I jot it all down, and then I have it. When you're working on your project, you might go to a meeting, a dinner with somebody that you're interviewing or something. You may have notes. Sometimes things happen and they do get written on a napkin over dinner or lunch. I mean, you have little Post-it notes. Sometimes you might wake up in the middle of the night with a thought and just scribble it on a notepad at your bedside. You can end up with bits of valuable information and ideas and concepts scattered all over the place like that on just little bits of paper here and there, or in this book or that book. And then maybe, depending on your project, maybe you've done a lot of research and you have a book that has information in it that pertains to what you're writing about. And so you might have books of maps if you're doing historical things or travel things, or it's unlimited what you can end up with. But you'll have what I call hard copy all over the place. And so how do you get all that together? Well, there's a few, these are just common sense, real basic tips, honestly. I recommend that you group like information together. Now, you can group it by maybe find the way that's the most efficient for you. You may put all of your books in one place and all of your notebooks in another place. You may get all of your little notes stacked together in one place. But like things together. Another way that you can group like information is by topic. Maybe if you can divide your project into however main topics there are in it, main points, then your materials will naturally fall. This over here, this piece needs to be written in this part, and this piece over here needs to go there. And then if you get into, like, if you're using books or things like that, or maybe you've got a whole bunch of recordings where you've interviewed people, or notes transcriptions where you've interviewed people, all kinds of information. You can color code those pieces to where everything that's going to be under this part of the material goes with a red tag, and everything under this part goes with a yellow tag. And then everything, even in a book, maybe the book has information on 3 or 4 different parts of your project, and you just use colored annotation tags to to stick on those pages. And then it's a system that's organized you so that when you're sitting there writing and you need to remember that quote that was in that book on this topic, you find the book there and you go to that color tab, boom, there's your information. You can also write things out old school and just start gathering all of your information on index cards. And that's real old school, but it does work. You know, it depends there again, what's the size of your project. Now, there is an element to all of this that we're not even talking about at this time, and I'm not going to because I want to get just the basics in. There are softwares out there for writers that help you organize a lot of things, but most of them are not going to help you do these initial steps. They'll help you organize specific things for your pieces of writing that you've created for your book, outlines and what have you, but they don't help you very much, if at all, manage the stuff that you have around you. I also recommend that you create you can create a separate notebook or journal, and every thought that you come up with, carry it with you all the time, and you just put it in that book. You can put sticky notes in it. You can tape things in it. You can do whatever, but you just have everything that pertains to that project in that book. And another thing that I really recommend, most of the work that I have done has been with people who are writing books, or I am writing the book for them. And so in doing that, there's a lot of pieces to some of them. And so I recommend, and it's worked very well, that if you have a file drawer that you can use to put everything together, or part of a file drawer, but what really works well for a lot of people is just to get a box. And some people will put some, they'll decorate it or do whatever they want to with it and kind of, write on it, this is my book or whatever. But everything that pertains to that project goes into that box, organized in the fashion that we've talked about. And there they have it. Then it sits beside their writing space. And when they're in their writing session, it's right there at hand, and they just file through, flip through, find what they want, and put it back. Whatever system that you create, it's worthless if you don't work it. So keep that in mind when you're doing all of this. Systems are great, but they're only worthwhile if you use them and make them work. The other kind of files that we all deal with are digital or electronic files, whatever you want to call them. We all have space in the cyber world, and we have information stored. And the tricky thing is, when you're writing, trying to remember. I have people that I've worked with that they've written something and it wasn't time to use it yet. They've saved it in their computer, and now they're in the middle of their project, and they're writing in earnest, and they're ready to go, and they reach into their computer to access that file, and it's like the file is gone. And it's so frustrating because it's like they've spent all this work on it, and they know it's there, and they were counting on that piece to bring a certain aspect to what they're writing, and it disappears. So it takes tons of time for them to finally, sometimes you even search, you'll do searches in your computer and still have trouble finding things. How do you get around that? Well, you're dealing with computer files, all kinds of online information that you may be storing on a hard drive in your cloud. I mean, we live in such a high-tech world today. Where is your stuff? Seriously, where's your stuff? You have images that you've saved, digital images, maps, the same kinds of things that you can have in hard copy files. You can have in digital files also. So what do you do with that? Well, here again, it's just simple organization. That's all we're talking about here, is just the simple stuff. So what I recommend is, wherever you save your materials, whether it's in the cloud or an external hard drive or wherever you keep your material, set up a special section there. Set up a folder for your writing project and make sure that everything goes into that folder. And within that folder, set up subfolders, set up folders under that folder, and label them so that you can find your main topics, just like we talked about main topics with the other files. Have a folder in that that big folder of your project, have these various folders for your main topics, and then file your materials according to what topic they go in. Here again, you might want to, maybe that won't work so well for you, and maybe it's better for you to have a folder under that, in that section, one for images, one for maps, one for histories, one for, you know, separate and sort by types of material. I leave that really loose for you because no two projects are exactly alike. And I'm not trying to skirt around it, but my point is that you have to organize it. You have to do it in such a way that it works for you. And that's the very most important thing. I also recommend that you maintain online or on your computer a master file of your project. This contains all the information that you've worked out in your planning phase, like we talked about last time. And if you watched the video last week and didn't look at the blog post, please go back and look at that post because there's a lot more information in there that'll be helpful to you. But keeping track of your goals, your mapping, what you've decided, what you've committed to, what needs to be done, all of that was part of planning. So use this master file now to, every time you advance, every time you do something on your project, go into that master and note what you've done so that the next time you pick it up, you know exactly where to pick it up. You know, oh, this is done. Maybe you had to skip something because it wasn't complete, or you couldn't finish it right now, and so you went on, but it left a gap back here. By noting that in your master, you're very, very much more sure to not have that hole show up when you get down to the end of the project. You've got your rough draft done. You're not going to have to go back and in the revision process go try to remember what that was. You've already got it, and your notes will tell you, go back and fill this in. It just helps you. Again, you have to create a system that works for you, and then you have to work the system. And then every time you sit down with a writing session, before you finish, put everything back away, put everything back where you got it. We learned that as kids. Put it back where it belongs, update where you are, the status of your project, and it's going to go so much smoother for you. Is this some work up front? Yes, it is, but it's actually more involved to talk to you about it than it is for you to sit down and think your way through it and do it, and then you're ready. And it just takes so much stress off of you. You will be thrilled that you did it. I hope this helps you some. I hope it helps you a lot. Next week, we're going to talk about organization again, but not this kind of organizing. We're going to be talking about your actual writing. And so, come on, let's get that project going. Let's do this thing. Thank you for joining me. God bless.